When you swing a club this summer, you could help save a life. Options Pregnancy Center invites you to join our Golf for Life tournament on June the 1st, supporting moms, babies, families right here in our community. Join us first at our kickoff on April the 13th to learn how you can get involved and receive a free round of golf. Call Vicki Parker, 501-743-5120 to attend the kickoff and see how you can partner. That's 501-743-5120. Golf for Life, because every life is worth defending.
Sit on that stump in Muddy Bottom with Vicki Parker. Vicki is an author and the CEO of Options Pregnancy Center in Cabot, Jacksonville, and Beebe. Now, here's Vicki.
Welcome back to Sit on That Stump in Muddy Bottom. I'm your host, Vicki Parker, and this is a place for quiet fighters. The ones who've walked through storms, the ones who carry weight, but don't need applause. And today, we're stepping into a conversation that requires courage, compassion, and truth, honestly. We've talked about life, we're talking about the church, and we're talking about how we respond when the conversation gets hard. And these type of conversations really do get hard. I've got a powerful guest with me today, someone that's very close and special to me, Dr. Mark Newman. He's the author of Contenders for Life, Speakers for Life, and the founder of the movement that is equipping believers across this country to stand strong, speak clearly, and love well. Dr. Newman, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Vicki. It's an honor to be here with you.
Well, Dr. Newman, before we get into the conference and all that God is doing through this movement, I want our listeners to hear your heart. What really led you into this work of equipping Christians to engage the topic that is really the toughest topic in America, across the nation and across the world, isn't it? And it's the topic of abortion.
Well, I'll tell you, I wish I could tell you that I was, lying in bed and then a golden light appeared above my head or God appeared on my TV screen and asked me to come into this. But to be brutally frank, God orchestrated it so I would just sort of fall into it. What happened was I was the director of speech and debate. In other words, I was the speech coach at the University of California at Irvine. And my associate pastor at my church at the time, a guy named Arthur Ellison, decided to take a one-year leave of absence to become a director of this weird thing called a crisis pregnancy center. And I didn't know anything about that, but he gave me a call. He knew I was training corporate speakers, and he said, would you come down and train my speaking staff? And I said, sure. What do you do? And so he told me what he did, and I said, well, I can take the stuff that I use to train corporate people, and I can retrofit it to work with your group. Can you send me some information about who you are and what you do? And so he sent me a book by Kurt Young called The Least of These, and he sent me a book by Bernard Nathanson called The Abortion Papers, and I read through those books, and my jaw hit the floor. I could not believe what I was seeing there. So I went ahead and I crafted the materials, and I went down and I did my training, and I thought that I'd done my good deed for my life, for the pro-life movement, and I was ready to go on and teach in those big glass buildings in Orange County, California. And God had other ideas. So, I ended up putting some stuff together, and I met with a pregnancy counseling center director in Vista, California, actually in San Marcos, California, named Grace Denny, and I sat down with her and I said, I've got this idea for an actual seminar, and if I put one of these on, do you think anybody would come? And she looked it over, and we had lunch together, and I walked her through all the material, and she said, I'd send 7 people, and I went, okay. And so, again, I thought I was going to do something local. And then a couple of years later, I find that I'm doing them in the region, like in Arizona and some other places. And then I ended up meeting a guy from the National Right to Life, and actually at a National Communication Association conference, because I'm a faculty member. I was a professor for almost 40 years. And I met the guy there, and we were at a session where a couple of academics were tearing apart the silent scream, and I had a number of rather pointed questions to ask the panelists. We had what in Washington is called a frank and open discussion. And when we were done, I didn't know David Ball, and I didn't know he was, 3 rows behind me, but he caught me out in the hallway, and he said, hey, would you like to speak at the National Right to Life? And I went, sure. So basically what's really happened, Vicki, is I spent most of my life when people asked me to do things that were ministry-oriented, you say yes if you possibly can. And took a couple of years to get me out there, but I did, and then things just kind of exploded from there. I was training all over the country. Eventually somebody walked up to me and said, "Hey, do you do banquets?" And I said, "Sure." And went out and started doing banquets. So I've been keynoting banquets and training speakers. And then a few years back, I'd say probably maybe 8 or 9 years ago, we started offering apologetics classes and pastoral training. And we put those together under a banner called the Contend for Life Conference and started offering it as a one-day conference about 3 years ago. And so I've been speaking all over the United States while I was a college professor, and then I left teaching full-time. I think it was 2015, 2016, and I've been doing this full-time ever since.
Yeah, and I was one of those people that was blessed. I call myself, along with some of the others, we're called
You didn't call it blessed back then.
I didn't call it blessed back then for sure. One of the toughest classes I've ever been in my life was apologetics in Oklahoma Wesleyan University, and that's where Mark and Scott Klusendorf began this apologetics education. But it was absolutely the best thing I ever did. It was like drinking from 4 water hoses, not one, and it was a fire water hose on top of it, a hydrant, in fact. That's about how fast it came. And but it was absolutely the best thing I've ever done. I think everybody in that class, we were the guinea pigs. We were the ones that started out, and we came from all over the nation, and we were all ages, in fact, and all education levels. So I say that because I want people to understand as you listen to this today that I want you to realize that you don't have to be higher level education. Now, with Mark's education, you would think that you would be intimidated by that. Well, yes, I was. In fact, I gave him the what fors at the end of that second week when he informed me that we had went through a master's level education, and I was ready to whip him and Scott because I did not have a college level education. So I was ready to really whip him, but it was absolutely the best thing. Even me. All that's to say that even me could do it, and so can you. And so it's really important that you understand that. I think sometimes
Vicki,
we get, yeah.
If we would have told you this ahead of time, would you have shown up?
No, because I almost had a stroke getting there. My mother had to pray me all the way across Arkansas and into Oklahoma, and then I called the doctor at 2:00 in the morning, thinking I was having a heart attack, but I was having an anxiety attack that I'd never had before. Because but I knew when we stood in the hallway at Heartbeat International and y'all introduced this program, the Lord would not leave me alone. He gut punched me and would not leave me alone until I went out there and wrote a check. And I started down that road. But I was, talking about stretching the rubber band, he flat stretched the rubber band on me then.
And look at you now.
And look at me now. I don't know what we're looking at, but we're looking at me now, you know. But what's a beautiful thing about this is this, that the general public we're not comfortable with this, I guess, to say the conversation, to either to start the conversation, to jump in the middle of the conversation, or either to end the conversation. Either way, I find that people are very intimidated to start it, afraid they're going to get in the middle of it and can't finish it, or in any way, form or fashion, they don't know. It's a very touchy subject. It's a touchy subject for our pastors. It's a touchy subject for our people in the churches. But the fact is, being equipped for anything that we do, whether it's speaking, whether it's defending life, or whether it is learning how to do any other job, like being an executive director or a CEO of a pregnancy center or any other company for that matter, you have to be educated, right?
You certainly have to be able to speak. I always told my students, the a lot of teachers will tell you that the class that they're teaching is the most important class you'll ever take in college, and I always told my students public speaking is the most important, and the rest of the teachers were lying because I asked my students, how many of you do you want to be mediocre at what you do? And nobody wants to be mediocre. And I said, well, great. If you're ever good at what you do, somebody eventually is going to ask you to teach other people how to do it. And guess what skill you need to be able to accomplish that goal? You've got to be able to speak in public. So we wanted to teach people to be good speakers. And then, of course, on this topic, anytime you're going to speak on things that are controversial, where you're going to get some cultural pushback, you've got to be properly equipped, not just with the facts. Facts are important, but also with a way to communicate those facts to people in a way that they can receive them and accept them.
Persuasive, not argumentative. That's where we lose people at. Don't you agree? Is we lose them when we're arguing with them. And I said this on a show just recently, and I said, well, when I use the word argue, and I don't mean it as in fight. I mean in debate. In debating the issue, but sometimes you will hear people make the depiction of it as arguing, but that's not what we mean, is it?
No, well, a lot of people, what they mean is they don't want to be yelled at. They don't want to, have an antagonistic conversation with somebody, and we don't have to do that. All we have to do is understand why our opponents think and say the things that they do, and then invite them to have a look at and analyze those ideas, those arguments that they have, and to see whether or not they hold any water. And if they do, then you and I can go home and not have to do this work anymore, I guess. But what we found is that the other side of this issue doesn't have much in the way of evidence or even coherent argument. So when we are able to, give them a comprehensive case for life, most of our opponents, it's the first time they've ever heard it. And the arguments that they've had fall apart, and then they have to make a decision: are they going to live an intellectually consistent life, or they walk out their lives in accordance with what they know now to be true, or are they going to continue to deceive themselves in order to continue doing something maybe that they would just like to do? But we certainly take the mask off, so we confront people with the reality of abortion, what it is, what it does to unborn children, what it does to moms and dads, and why we ought not be doing that.
And I think also, though, Mark, we also bring them to the table of something that you just said a little bit earlier. Why do they think the way they do? Is that because they heard someone tell them that? Is that because they've done the research and they know this to be true on what level? Oh, no. Yeah. And
no.
That's not that's not how it works, is it?
No, most people believe what they believe. Francis Schaeffer said it best. He said, on questions of morality, most people catch their morality like people catch the measles. They just get it from somebody else. They've not done the research. They've not looked at the evidence. They just have assumed that this is what smart people think because it's what the media keeps spewing out. But you can take a look at media and what they have to say, and you can evaluate it, and you will see very quickly that what they're telling people is just simply not true.
Exactly. And it's amazing to me. I just heard a lady it was a young girl on Instagram, and as I listened to her, I realized that she had done just that. She had taken what she had been told. It's almost like a parent-child relationship with the general public. They hear either through media or their friends, if they're on the pro-abortion side, they take what that person said as gospel. Instead of questioning it to ask themselves, is that really true? How do I find out if that's actual fact, or is that something that they think? Because we get that same thing in every subject, don't we? We think that we know something, we spew it out, and yet then we find out, well, that's not even true. That's not even the way it really is. But we didn't go do the research. So that young lady, for example, she was completely, it was the epitome, in my opinion, of child-parent relationship. The children mimic what parents do and what parents say. So if parents say this is XYZ, then those kids are going to go and tell everybody it's XYZ because my parents said so, and they know everything. So this young woman had done the same thing about conception of life, about a baby in the womb. Are they who they say, who we believe them to be? They don't have any Christian background. Maybe they don't have the conception. They don't have any of that to fall back on. They've never heard the message and will not stop and listen because it's easier to jump into this. So let's talk a minute about Contenders for Life, the seminar. Now, what is it, and who is that really for? Okay,
so we have been putting on Contend for Life conferences now. We call them conferences, and because they're made of two parts. The first event that we do, and by the way, we've got one coming to Little Rock on April 16th, so it's coming right up. The first event inside the conference is called How to Teach the Toughest Topic, and it's for pastors, teachers, ministry leaders. If you message on in a church, this is for you. And so what we do is we bring the folks in, and this is what we tell them. We explain to them why. The first part's kind of fun. We explain why people reject truth claims from the pulpit and from the classroom. Isn't it weird that you can be up in the pulpit, you can be, explaining the Word of God to people, and they're looking at their cell phones?
Right.
I mean, you are delivering a message on the Word of Almighty God, and people aren't paying attention. And then later on, as you might be surprised to find out, that people don't always do what the pastor tells them to do. And so I ask, why do you think that is? And so I walk them through why people reject truth claims. I suggest to them that there are some ways that we can get around those barriers and make people to be a little more accepting of it, not just accepting intellectually, but actually go out and do the things that they ought to be doing. And then we talk a little bit about why, it's called How to Teach the Toughest Topic. Why is preaching and teaching about abortion different than a lot of the other topics that we talk about? And so we walk them through that. And then we do a step-by-step guide on how to speak about abortion from the pulpit and in the classroom, so that we can do it both winsomely, in other words, in a way that the people who are listening can hear it and accept it, and also effectively, because we don't want to sugarcoat anything. Right. So I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive. I think that you can be both concerned about the people that you're talking to and deliver them the absolute positive truth. Then in the evening, we have a session that's called Contenders Making the Case for Life, and this is for everybody. The only limitation I put on it is I tell folks it's for people age 13 and up. I don't know that I bring out people younger than that, because we're going to be talking about a lot of really difficult things.
Right.
In this session, we're going to take everybody in the area, and they are going to learn how to make the scientific, the moral, and the biblical case for life. They're going to learn why abortion advocacy, or abortion ideology, how it puts everybody at risk, not just unborn children, and then obviously what they can do about it. So we're going to be doing these events on April the 16th at Immerse Discipleship Institute, which is out on Bowman Road in Little Rock. And if people want to register for that event, they can go to Speaker for Life, SPEAKERFORLIFE.com/little-rock. So, and if that's too much to remember, they can go to speakerforlife.com/events and just find the Little Rock event and then register for it.
Well, Mark, this is one thing that I would like to encourage people at this point, and we'll talk about this again, but this is one thing I would really like to encourage people about. If you've been around me, those that are listening, if you've been around me and you've heard me talk so passionately about being pro-life and about protecting life, protecting moms and dads over the years, then I want you to understand that in the beginning, I was definitely passionate about it. When I went in 2015 to Oklahoma, I was passionate then about it. But being able to make the case in a winsome, persuasive way that I did not turn them off, because once you come at people a certain way, they're going to shut you down. And so you're not going to win any kind of ground with them. What I have found since then is that when I engage them in the right mindset, with the right language, and with the right questions, that it amazes me how suddenly they are willing to talk to me about it, and not angrily. That's interesting to me. They're angry. And I'll tell you when it really paid off the most for me was in 2024 when we were fighting the abortion amendment in the streets here in Arkansas. And the hardest of hardest came out against us, of course, and God just moved beautifully as conversations were able to be opened up with the other side right there on the line, why they believe what they do. And I was able to put that rock in the shoe. Scott talks a lot about that, about putting that rock in the shoe. And it was interesting over the summer, those months, it was about, I don't know, from March to August, those months were interesting. The people that I came in contact with that did not feel threatened by me, but was willing to engage me and willing to say, and I just treated them like we'd known each other forever, and we were able to have a conversation. I remember one particular lady that she had an abortion, and she told me that she had, which when I offered to her post-abortion healing, then she was in shock. And she said, you would do that for me? I said, I would do this for everybody here. I mean, they're going to have to calm down and sit down, but I would do it for every one of them if they're willing to. I said, God never intended on y'all to go through this pain and stay in the pain. I said, He's a healer, and that's what He wants. Well, through that conversation, we were able to talk about who her child was in the womb, and how that child could have had the opportunity to be born and go through a natural death if that's what ended up happening. But God does miracles every day, so you never know what would have happened, and we won't know now. But it's interesting how that training that I got all the way back in 2015 and 2016 continues to pay off today. Now, I'm not the brightest brick in the bunch. You guys that listen to me know that I don't claim to be a theologian, and I don't claim to be the most educated person. What I am is passionate. I'm passionate, and I know what I know. And because I have been to places like this, and I have gotten the education, I've had Mark come to Cabot and do a Contenders for Life for us, and it was amazing. People still talk about that, and we're going to do it again. But I'm telling you that you cannot get enough education, and if you, in today's world, especially in the state of Arkansas, even though we're a red state, Mark, and we are pro-life, we have pro-life legislature, we have all of these people, but abortion is still happening tremendously, and it's happening. So we will never get away from this conversation until Jesus comes back. So we might as well dig in and learn how to do this, because if not, and we find out that someone is in our Sunday school class or in our church is faced with an unplanned pregnancy, wouldn't it be wonderful if the church was the one who made the first contact? Wouldn't it be wonderful if the church was the one who learned to love them first and talk to them first, to get them out of their fear, to get past that, to get them maybe to a pregnancy center?
Well, the enemy's out there telling everybody that the church is going to be judgmental, don't go there.
Yes.
And, they've got research out there that shows that 49% of women believe that when a pastor talks about forgiveness, it doesn't include terminated pregnancies.
Right.
So you had a lot of people out there thinking all they're going to get is condemnation. And I'm telling you, I spoke at a church in Reno not long ago, and when I was done, a woman came forward, talked to the pastor there, had 3 abortions. Said she was a Christian. She said she'd never been able to ask for forgiveness. She couldn't get the words out. he put his arm around her and said, well, we'll say them together. And then the next day on Monday, they got 18 calls for appointments for people who either had abortions in their past or were struggling right now with an untimely pregnancy. And so if that can happen at a kind of a mid-sized church in Reno, imagine what it must be like in Little Rock and a bunch of other places.
Exactly.
And there is no, we've got a lot of work to do in this country before we can put an end to legal abortion, because you've got states now. There are 22 states out there that offer telehealth abortion across state lines. Some of them explicitly in their laws say across state lines, and then they pass shield laws to protect their abortionists from any criminal, civil, or even insurance-based repercussions for doing it. And so, in other words, you've got people in a state. Well, I live in Tennessee. You live in Arkansas. It's illegal to have an abortion in our states.
Right.
But you can get on with 2 clicks of a mouse. You can have a telehealth appointment with a doctor in Colorado, California, right, New York, New Jersey, and within 24 to 48 hours, you can have abortion pills mailed to you. And there's just not a single thing a state can really do to stop that from happening right now. That we're making some headway, but there are still a lot of legal things that are going to happen before we can put an end to that. So in the meantime, there were over 1 million abortions in the United States last year. About 650,000 of those abortions happened via an abortion pill. Mm-hmm. So, you've got an abortion problem. We've got one here in Tennessee. I guarantee you've got one in Arkansas.
Yes, we do.
And what we have to do is we keep focusing on it as a political issue, and we have to remember that it's an individual thing, that's a decision that somebody makes, and as a result, that somebody lives in a community. That somebody, 54% of people having abortions claim to have some connection with the church. So that somebody is possibly in church or in your pew. I can tell you, I know for a fact of times when I have spoken at a church, had no idea that this was the case, but found out later that there was a pregnant girl in the church when I spoke who chose not to abort her baby because of what I said.
Absolutely.
So we need to have this message in the church. We need to help people to know, if this is the place you come, and we're going to hook you up with our area pregnancy center, and we're going to get you all of the physical, emotional, spiritual supports that you need to be able to make it through this difficult time in your life, and you don't have to abort that baby in order to have the life that you think God's calling you to. We're going to help you to do that. And the other side, all they're offering them is death. They're telling them, hey, you can keep your life or get that thing you want. All you have to do is intentionally put your baby to death. Now, they don't ever say it that way, but that's what they're really selling.
That's what they're saying, exactly.
Yeah, and yes.
So
that's where we are at.
Yeah, and I'm as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking back to pastors are very intimidated. They feel like that they're going to, and this is my feeling. I don't know this for a fact, but I feel like that when they do try to speak about abortion in the church, one, I don't feel like they feel equipped. I feel that and it hurts me for them, that all of us are around here and could help with that, but they are intimidated. But I think that it comes from when they did try, that somebody in the church came up and said, that there's women here and men here that have had abortions, and so I don't think that you should talk about this because you're making it hard on them. But in that same vein, to not offer them healing and hope, and not talk about it, and know just because they don't hear it doesn't mean that it's not happening, is exactly what you said. A pregnant girl in the church, and she decides not to have an abortion because of what she heard pastors say that day, with compassion and with fact. And so
the fact of the matter is, we are condemning people, Vicki.
Yes.
When we don't talk about abortion in a church, we're condemning people to live for decades under the weight of an unconfessed, unforgiven abortion.
Absolutely.
I've had people come up to me at a banquet who told me that they had an abortion 10 years earlier, and I'm the first person they've ever told, and I was a total stranger.
Absolutely.
And when we don't talk about abortion from the pulpit or in our Sunday school classes or in our youth groups, this is what we're really saying. The young person, hearing the silence, concludes that abortion must not be a big deal because if it was, somebody'd say something about it.
Right.
And then when they go down to the abortion facility or when they go and take the abortion pill, the enemy immediately comes to them and says, oh, no, the reason why they don't talk about it is because this is that unforgivable sin.
Yes.
Now, yeah, maybe you'll be a Christian. Sure, maybe. Maybe God won't reject you, but he can't use a person like you.
Right.
You killed your baby.
Right.
And so what I'm saying is when we talk in our churches about, hey, you know what? Some people, the reason why the Bible says you shouldn't commit fornication is because people do.
Right.
Right? It's not because people don't. The Bible doesn't ever command you to breathe because it simply assumes you're going to. It commands you not to engage in fornication because it assumes that you're going to, and it tells you, you got to stop. Don't do that. But some people are going to. That's why they're going to need forgiveness. But
Right.
Fornication comes with biological consequences. Sometimes that leads to children. Now, you don't want to compound fornication with intentional child killing. So what we need to do is come into the church and say, hey, some people make these mistakes, both men and women. We don't pin this on women, men and women, right?
Exactly.
And then we tell them, hey, if this is a mistake that you've made and yet you find that you now are carrying an image bearer of God inside your body, we want to provide you with all you need to be able to make a life-affirming decision for that child. And then same thing. When I speak to a group of people, and there's more than 30 people in that room, I tell them, listen, statistically speaking, chances are nearly 100% that there are people in this room that have abortion in their past. You've either had an abortion, you've counseled somebody to get one, you've paid for one, you've given somebody a ride down to get one. I mean, chances are nearly 100%. And I tell folks, there is not a single sin anybody in this room has ever committed that's beyond the forgiving, cleansing power of the blood of Jesus Christ.
That's right.
And so we want to give them a path forward. And then I tell them, over here at the pregnancy center, they've got, forgiven and set free, or some other kind of surrendering the secret, or some other post-abortive or post-abortion Bible study to help people find wholeness. There's places like Reassemble and Deeper Still for people who need a weekend retreat away. There are all kinds of ways that people can find healing. But when we're silent,
right,
we basically cede all of the ground to the enemy. And now the enemy can do with our people whatever he wants. Mm-hmm. And we need to be an oasis of healing and an oasis of help. And that's what people need to see in the church. And the only way we're going to do that is if we speak. Now, I want to say one other thing. Sorry, I'm going to...
It's okay.
All right. I'm going to give the pastors... If you are a pastor or you are a teacher and you are in the sound of my voice, let me tell you something. If you come to this session, I promise you, I'm not going to beat up on you. I know something. My best friend's a pastor. I know something about pastors. Almost all of you went to a Christian... Maybe you went to a Christian high school, and I'm going to tell you what, they never talked about abortion there. Right. Then he went on to seminary where they never talked about abortion there. Mm-hmm. And now you're over here in the pulpit and people are saying, how come you don't talk about abortion, but nobody's ever trained you to do it?
That's right.
So in my book, Contenders, I give 8 reasons why pastors don't preach about abortion, and all of them are bad reasons. So I'm going to do something different. I'm going to equip you to speak on any kind of controversial topic, and then I'm going to give you abortion as an example, so it's going to be a really good 2-for-1 here. And so I'd love to see you out there because I want you to feel equipped and emboldened. And I have response forms from over 1,000 pastors nationwide who've been to this session, said it's the best thing they've ever heard on this topic, and they walked out of the room feeling not only equipped, but also they feel like they've got the courage necessary to go out and do it. So we want to help make that a reality for you.
It's got to be important. It's got to be... We are at the end of this road. We've been saying Jesus is coming back. People that are listening going, oh, I've heard that my whole life. No, he really is. He's coming. He's got his toe off. He's got his toe off the cloud. I hope to tell you. But here's the thing that people listening, I really hope you get a hold of this. For years, I did, in fact, for 16 years, actually, quite frankly, the pastor that was at my church, every Sanctity of Human Life month, that Sunday, I was given the pulpit. And he relinquished the entire session. And I want you to know that I had women and men that came up and gave their testimony about what abortion had done to them. Without exception, Mark, without exception, I had women and men who would walk up to me. I'm talking like anywhere from 5 to 10 that would walk up to me and look at me and go look at me like, you know, don't you? No, I didn't, unless the Holy Spirit said they've had an abortion. I didn't know. But they think that people can see it on them. And that's what guilt and shame does to you. And it doesn't. And what's beautiful about those 16 years is there were so many that came up and they were able, and they said the same thing to me, Mark. They said, I've never told anybody before. No one knows. Or me and my husband are the only ones that know that we did this. So on and so forth. And so they did that. The first big step on the devil's head is when they open up and say it for the first time. The next big step is when they know that they can go further and that God's forgiving grace is so powerful that he wants us to enter into a covenant with him because he died on the cross. He knew when he went to that whipping post, he was going for your healing, mind, spirit, body, soul, and emotion, for everything. He also knew when he went to the cross and he overcome death, hell, and the grave, and he said, it is finished, that he had paid the full price. All we have to do is walk into the forgiveness, walk into allowing him to walk us through that. And that's the beauty of it. But here's what happens. If pastors don't offer that, whether they're doing it or they're allowing someone from a pregnancy center, a team from the pregnancy center do it, it makes the difference. I'll never forget Rebecca Hagan, the first time I heard her testimony. She said, I grew up in a church. I never once heard that abortion was wrong. Now, those of you that have been at my banquet and you heard Rebecca speak, she took the abortion pill. And she did not know, but the Holy Spirit convicted her. And she was upstairs in her mom and dad's house. Do you know how many women across the world and across this nation, across the state of Arkansas, that same exact thing happens? So I don't know how we're going to be held accountable, but I feel like for me, that if I do not say these hard things, that we are accountable for this, that I am going to be held accountable for not letting them know. Whether they come to it or not is totally up to them. It's just like offering salvation. If you don't offer salvation and someone dies and burns in hell for the rest of their of eternity, then who answers for that? Well, if I didn't offer it and I knew they weren't saved, I think I'd have to answer for it. I have to at least answer it to God. I've got enough on my plate as it is to have to answer for it. I don't want to add anything. So I say that pastors, if you're listening today, I cannot say to you enough, go to this. I don't care what you have to cancel. I don't care what you have to bow out. Get someone else to do the prayer team that night. You've got other pastors. Youth pastors should be there. Oh, goodness. Am I right, Mark? Youth pastors need to be there. Yes.
And bring their youth.
Bring their youth.
Youth pastors can come to the first session, and then they should need to come back in the evening and bring their youth with them. Because here's the thing. I don't want to put all this on pastors either.
Right.
All of us have an obligation.
Every one of us.
I know for a fact that a lot of pregnant women will not go to a pastor, but they will go to a friend.
Yes.
And so this is not rocket science, folks. You can learn how to do this in the course of an evening. You'll be exposed to all the information that you're going to need to be able to get this done. And just to let you know, the level of ignorance in the church, one of the last ones of these I did, I asked all the people who were there. There were over 100 people in the room. I said, how many of you have ever heard a comprehensive case for life like the one you heard this evening? 3 hands went up. One gal was a Catholic, and the other 2 were Orthodox. Not a single evangelical raised their hand to say they had ever heard this before. So don't be one of those people. Be one of those people who actually does know. And then once you know, then you can share it with other people. And this is how we're going to win this.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to win this by changing the hearts and minds of people, helping them to understand the love that their people receive at a pregnancy center like yours, and the knowledge, right, that they can walk in the truth.
Well, and I believe it starts in the church. It's got the church. We are the solution. We have the solution because we're where it's happening at the tune of like 70% of people. The last number that I heard, it might be more than that now, but the last figure that I heard was like 70% of the people who seek abortion are in the church. Is that because they do not hear the loving grace of God, and that there's somebody that's going to back them up, that somebody's going to come step up beside them and go like, let's see what we can do to help answer the problems that you feel like is impossible for you to cross over at this point. Let us walk this thing out with you. No shame, no guilt. Let us walk it out with you, instead of feeling like if I'm going to be shunned, I'm going to be mistreated. I would rather sit under a message of someone that I know has been through the pain, that has been through the guilt and shame and overcame it by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. I'd a lot rather been sitting under somebody like that than somebody that maybe knows nothing about it, has never experienced it in their life. So what God does is He raises up people who've experienced trauma, has experienced trouble, has experienced hurt, has experienced abortion, all these things. And He raises them up to tell the story of His amazing grace. And so if we do that, and then we in the church step up to the plate, we're the ones that have the answer. We have the answer. Jesus is the answer. So we have the answer. Why would we hold it hard and close to our chest? Because we're afraid we're going to hurt somebody. Isn't it more damage? Am I just...
And for anybody who's in your listening audience who is thinking, see, this is just a Christian thing. If you come to the evening session, you're going to find that it's a Christian thing, but only to the extent that Christians like facts. And the fact of the matter is that the keystone to this whole argument is, what is the nature of unborn children? Right. Are they human beings? Yes. And we're going to prove, using evidence that even someone who doesn't agree that the Bible is the Word of God, they don't have biblical underpinnings to the way that they think. If they just want to follow the science, I will help them follow the science. If they want to look at this from the perspective of just natural morality, we will make a good, solid moral argument for why. When I speak on college campuses, I don't generally present the biblical case for life, because I assume that a lot of the people in my audience don't acknowledge the Word of God.
Right.
But I can make a case, a watertight case, for why we ought not intentionally kill children, using nothing more than science and morality. And a lot of that morality, by the way, if you come, so this will be a little bit of a teaser, if you'll come, you're going to find that a lot of those moral claims are upheld by evidence from our opponents. In other words, it's not the pro-life movement saying it, it's abortionists who are saying it.
Right.
But we never hear about those arguments because no one ever tells us. And, we live in a world now where the media has got a singular narrative that they preach to everybody, which is that abortion is the appropriate way to go forward, and all those other people who are against abortion are a bunch of religious fanatics and fake medical clinics. And that's just absolutely not true.
Absolutely.
The fact of the matter is, they are pushing abortion because it fits their political, allows them to get power and money. And I can demonstrate all this. I don't make claims I can't prove. And so if you guys come on out, you're going to learn about this, and I will demonstrate it to you.
And Mark, one of the most sensitive parts of this conversation also sits around rape and incest, don't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And it's a really tough one. And this is something that will really help people. That's the place. I think that really is the thing that keeps them from engaging more than anything, because every one of us women, every one of us if we have a fear, it is that of being raped or incest and then becoming pregnant from it. So, that they're like, but what if they've been raped or incest? Isn't that a right reason to do it? And so you help them with that argument too, with clarification.
And there are some people out there who said some ridiculously stupid things. I'm talking about pro-life people when folks bring that topic up. And what I teach folks is the first words out of your mouth when somebody talks about rape and incest need to be compassion. We need to be able to say to people, hey, look, if you, I don't know, but if you've been a victim of rape or incest, I need to let you know you've been a victim of a horrible, terrible crime. And I got to tell you something, whoever committed that crime, if they are caught, tried, and convicted, they should be punished to the fullest extent of the law. People all need to understand that rape is a horrible thing. But the question then becomes, do the circumstances of somebody's conception have any impact on whether or not they should be put to death?
Exactly.
And so we'll walk people through a couple of scenarios. But it's funny. I just I had an online conversation with somebody recently about the fact that let me tell you something most people don't know. Most people don't know that 50% of the women who conceive as a result of rape or incest go on to give birth to those children. So people have this idea that women who get pregnant as a result of rape, they uniformly abort. They don't.
They don't.
And then of those women who do give birth to their children, 50% of those women choose to parent that child.
Right.
And people say, really, do you know anybody who's been born as a result of rape or incest? And I said, well, right off the top of my head, I can tell you a couple.
Yep.
One of them is a good friend of mine named Stephen Holland, who is he's a worship leader. He works in this space. He's got a ministry called Broken Not Dead. He's doing incredible things, and I wonder many times what would have happened had his mom decided that just it'd be a good idea to put him to death. And she was a mentally challenged woman who was a victim of a gang rape. She couldn't even have pointed out who the dad was. So people got this kind of bizarre idea, and they think, oh, we're doing women a favor. But you don't. Number one, abortion does not unrape anybody.
Right.
Right. There's an abortion will not unrape a woman. Mm-mm. But what it does do is it violates her body for a second time, and then intentionally kills her child. Yeah. And there's no way to know whether or not that child she's got in her body right now, it may be the only child she's ever able to carry.
That's true. And not only that, Mark, but there's 20. So us women think that getting rid of the baby would be getting rid of the problem. But the reality is it does compound it because 23 chromosomes, you never get rid. Science has proven now that parts of, the literal molecules of that child, when we parent willingly or non-willingly, they can be found within the mother. And so that mother still deals with the same, even though she feels like she can justify that, it still affects her. And she still feels because 23 of her chromosomes, half of that child was hers.
Yes.
And so
that's what people forget is that it's not the rapist's child. And by the way, I'm fully in charge. I believe that any child who's been conceived as a result of an act of rape, the father of that child or the rapist, whoever the rapist is, must legally relinquish all rights to that child. You should never be able to visit that child, do anything with that child.
Anything.
All right, that's gone. Now it's up to the mom, and now she can choose to parent that child. She can choose to place that child for adoption. By the way, there are 7 to 14 families in a waiting list right now for every adoptable child in America.
Yes.
So, we just need to be able to give people the truth and help them to know, what their true options are. But the question is should you ever put an innocent person to death for the crimes of someone else? And I think most people, when they think about it for a while, realize that the child in the womb is always going to be an innocent party. That child's exactly where it's supposed to be. That child's doing exactly what it's supposed to do inside of an organ that is designed to protect and support the life of that child. It's where that child is, even though we don't like how that child got there, where that child is exactly where that child's supposed to be. And so you don't kill one person for the crimes of somebody else. By the way, according to a Supreme Court decision in the late 1970s, even a serial violent rapist doesn't face the death penalty. So the most you can hope to give them is life in prison without possibility of parole. Why is it that the only person that is facing the death penalty is one of the innocent ones? That doesn't seem fair to me.
I know, and I don't think anybody else when they hear that, because I think the majority have not heard that put that way or think about that. But I'd like for them to sit on that stump muddy bottom and just think about it. Would you want to pay for the sins of your father? I got enough to pay for on my own. I don't need to have to pay for his sins also. I don't think any of us would. And so why would we have to pay, or should we have to pay even, for the sins of our father when we didn't have anything? And Pam Stencil's another person who was conceived in rape, and she is so grateful and so thankful for her mother giving her life, even though she never got to meet her mother this side of heaven. But I remember she said, I cannot wait to meet my mother in heaven because I want to hug her and hold her and tell her how much I love her and thank you for giving me life. And look what she has done. See, they're not non-protected. Just because the product of what they called the product of rape doesn't discount the humanity and who you are and the goodness, because God created that in you regardless of how you were conceived. So, when believers, I believe that when believers are equipped, they stop avoiding and they start engaging. I just think that that's how it works. So let's talk about a little bit more about the role of the church in this last minute or two, and just let's talk a little bit more about what Contenders for Life really. I would like for them to know about your book too, Mark, and you'll talk to them about it. But if there's some listeners that for some reason they're not going to be able to be there, I really would like for them to know how to get your book, and it goes further in depth about even what you're going to train them on.
Yeah, there's no way even in 3 hours I can cover everything that's covered in that book, and I've got another one coming out on top of it. So you can pick up a copy of Contenders. Just go to Amazon and just type in Contenders, and then you put in my last name Newman, Newman, and it'll come right up. You can get it at Barnes & Noble. Any online bookseller will have access to that book, and you can purchase it there. I think that right now they've got it on sale at Amazon, so it'd be a good time to pick it up.
Right.
And
where's it going to be at, too?
The event is going to be held at Immerse Discipleship Institute, which is at 3321 South Bowman Road, Suite H in Little Rock, Arkansas. And that's going to be for both events. So the How to Teach the Toughest Topic event is for messengers in the church from noon until 2 p.m. Okay. And then we're coming back from 6 to 9 p.m. that night on April the 16th, and we're going to be doing Contenders Making the Case for Life, and that one's open to everybody. But seating is limited, so you do need to register.
Yes.
So go to speakerforlife.com/events or speakerforlife.com/little-rock, and you'll be able to go ahead and register for your event. When you register, that gives us an opportunity to get notes out to you in advance of the event, and then we send everybody an information pack following the event with all of the resources that they listen to at the event, so that they don't have to actually get writer's cramp trying to get all of the source citations down on their notes.
Absolutely. Well, Mark, I really thank you for joining us today and sharing about this. This is such an important topic, and it's such a great opportunity for people who do not feel equipped to come into the kingdom and learn how to do this. I think in these last days that we're on this earth, before Jesus comes back and takes his bride home, that it's really important we do that. So I want to close with this. This conversation really isn't about winning debates. It's about reaching people. It's about being ready when someone looks at you and says, I don't know what to do. And you don't turn away. You lean in because you've been equipped, because you know what you're doing. And that's what really today is all about. And here on Sit on That Stump Muddy Bottom, we speak to quiet fighters, the ones who have been through the storm, the ones who don't need to prove anything, but still carry the weight of all of it. And here's what I want to tell you. You can finish well. Not loud, not proud, not faithful, but yes, faithful. And maybe, just maybe, God will use your voice to change someone else's story and give them the opportunity to choose life and be supported if they have already done it, then to be supportive and get them to a place where God can heal them. Because I can tell you, if God heals them from one abortion, they usually will never do it again. It's very, very rare because they've already been through it and they know what the healing grace of God is. So I'm Vicki Parker, and this is Sit on That Stump Muddy Bottom, and we want to thank you for joining us today with Mark Newman. Unexpected pregnancy, you don't have to face it alone. At Options Pregnancy Centers, we provide no-cost medical grade pregnancy tests and ultrasounds in a safe, caring environment. Our trained team is here to listen, answer your questions, and help you explore your options with confidence. With locations serving Cabot, Beebe, Lone Oak, and Jacksonville, help is closer than you think. Call Options Pregnancy Center today at 501-941-8703 to schedule your confidential appointment. You are not alone. Options Pregnancy Centers, making a difference one life at a time.